Thank you for having me. It's hard to fall and act like Bangsa Johor because every time I've achieved a Zen state of giving a talk, my heart rate goes up with the drums. And so right now it's hitting with the beat with the drums, okay? So excuse me if I just take a moment to relax. So most people know me as a clinical psychologist, a researcher, a lecturer. I know myself as a really cool, hip, funny person. You may not. But few people know my personal struggle with depression. It's actually really hard to convey what it felt like, the feelings of sadness, the thoughts of condemnation, the sense of urgency to end it all as soon as possible. Depression, one of the most common mental illnesses. I'm trained to diagnose it. The low mood, loss of pleasure, insomnia, fatigue, low self-worth, and even the suicidal ideation. But it's hard to recognize the signs when you find yourself in its grip. It happens so slowly and insidiously. I attributed it to everything but depression, stress, workload, transition from Canada to Malaysia. My family would ask me, "Are you okay?" I said, "Of course I'm okay. Why wouldn't I be? Life is good. I've got a job. I've got friends. And sure, I'm stressed, but everyone is also stressed, right?" So there was nothing wrong, but something wasn't right. I wasn't happy. But I should be happy, right? Maybe I was just ungrateful. Maybe I was expecting too much. I started feeling bad for feeling bad. Eventually, it dawned upon me that maybe I'm depressed. So I took several self-report measures. I underreported my symptoms and downplayed everything, but I had to face the fact that I was. It took me 6 months to recover from my depression, and then several years to work through the consequences of it. I discovered that recovery is a lonely road. It's as though a war had happened, but rejoicing that the guns have fallen silent is premature, because as you walk back to the life you once had, you see the destructive effects of the illness, the broken relationships, the ill health. Contrary to my profession as a clinical psychologist, my belief in the importance of mental well-being and treatment, I did not seek professional help. To be honest, I was afraid. Afraid of it being official, afraid of what people would say, afraid of how society would treat me. But I decided that today, I don't want to be afraid anymore. I will not be afraid anymore. Because depression is only part of my story. It does not define me. It is also part of the untold story of millions of Malaysians. In 2015, the National Health and Morbidity Survey found that 30% of Malaysians have a mental health condition at any one point in time. That's 9 million. Or 1 in 3 Malaysians have poor mental well-being at this very moment. The 5th edition of the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is the clinical manual of mental disorders, defines mental illness as a behavioral or psychological syndrome or pattern that occurs in an individual that reflects an underlying psychobiological dysfunction, the consequences of which are clinically significant distress, for example, a painful symptom, or disability, that is impairment in one or more important areas of functioning. Mental illness, in short, is a group of behavioral or psychological signs that indicate to us something is not quite right, psychologically and biologically. The consequences of which is we cannot thrive or achieve well-being. And the most common mental illness is depression, which will be the primary focus of my talk today, although much of what I say can be applied to many of the other mental illnesses. So depression, a mental illness, is characterized by low mood and or loss of pleasure or interest most of the day, nearly every day, for 2 weeks or more. It interferes significantly with your functioning in life. 1 in 10 Malaysians are depressed. That's 3 million. On average, it takes someone with depression 4 years to seek help, if they ever do, assuming help is available to them. Unfortunately, for many Malaysians, there is no help available to them. We have 300 psychiatrists in Malaysia. To meet the minimum World Health Organization recommendations for a population of this size, we would need 3,000 psychiatrists. We have even fewer clinical psychologists, approximately 150. I am a rare breed. Welcome. No, just kidding. So we have about, 150 clinical psychologists, 300 psychiatrists, 3 million Malaysians with depression. That works out to be 1 psychiatrist per 10,000 Malaysians with depression, and 1 clinical psychologist per 20,000 Malaysians with depression. Maybe the urgent need to increase our resources is not apparent until we consider the cost of the illness. So a cost of any illness can be computed in terms of years. The number of years, healthy life years we lose to an illness, the number of years we spent living with a disability, the number of years lost due to a shortened lifespan. The Ministry of Health estimates that we lose more than 100,000 healthy life years every year to depression. Let's think about it this way. Imagine a typical day. You get up, go to work, put in your 9 to 5, have dinner with a loved one. That's time spent at your job and time spent with the people you care about. Now imagine a day with depression. You struggle to get out of bed. Maybe you make it to work at 10 a.m. Difficulty concentrating, you're tired. You can't wait till it's 5 p.m. You trudge back home, go right back into bed. You isolate yourself from important relationships in life. So it's time lost to an illness. To put a financial cost to it, depression costs Malaysia 1.9 billion ringgit every year. And much of that does not actually go towards treatment, but is incurred due to loss of employment, loss of productivity, even loss of life. The causes of depression are many and complex, both biological and psychological, and there is no one single cause of depression, but let me just highlight 5 common ones. The first, negative life stress. For example, losing a job or losing an important relationship. Second, negative thinking styles, such as believing that you are the cause of all bad things that have happened to you and nothing will ever change. The third, neurochemical imbalance, such as serotonin. And the fourth, neuroanatomical abnormalities in key structures of the brain. And finally, genetics. The heritability of depression is approximately 37%. Now, the good news. The good news is that we have many effective ways to help reduce the risk of depression and other illnesses. We have also effective treatments that can help improve symptoms and help people live more meaningful and happier lives. But here's our first key problem. We need more mental health resources in Malaysia. We need more mental health professionals in Malaysia. We need more accessible, effective, accessible, effective, and affordable intervention and prevention programs in Malaysia. Now, even if we do increase the resources, will you go? Who would go? That's our second problem. Mental illness is heavily stigmatized, and stigma stops people from seeking help. Only about 50% of people with depression ever seek help. And even then, it takes them an average of 4 years to do so. In 1999, the first Surgeon General's report on mental health was released. The Surgeon General identified stigma as being one of the major barriers that stop people from seeking help. Stigma is a Greek word that refers to a kind of tattoo mark that was burned into the skins of criminals, slaves, traitors, to identify them as blemished or morally polluted individuals. Today, instead of a physical mark, we brand people with mental illnesses as weak, dangerous, or crazy. The lack of understanding of what mental illness is and what causes it contributes to this fear and stigma. And so here is how stigma works. We perpetuate negative stereotypes of mental illness. We treat people with mental illnesses accordingly, as if they are weak, dangerous, or crazy. Consequently, over time, they begin to accept these labels as true and see themselves as such. Unfortunately, many of these labels are lifelong and continue even after the person has recovered. Is it any wonder why people don't want to seek help? Because admitting to having an illness would be like admitting to being all of those negative associations. Changing this culture of shame starts with changing the way you and I see mental health. We need to invest in mental health the same way we invest in physical health. We need to stop seeing mental illness as a weakness or failure. We need to extend the same rights and considerations to people with mental illnesses as we do people with physical illnesses. And we need to come together to build a mentally healthy society, one characterized by compassion, acceptance, and openness. Now, the research has shown that the most effective ways to reduce the stigma of mental illness is to understand what mental illness is and to know someone with a lived experience. So let me take my stand in this fight against the stigmatization of mental illness. So who am I? My name is Chua Sook Ning, and yes, I've had depression. Maybe I will be depressed again. But depression is only part of my story. It does not define me. I'm a clinical psychologist, a lecturer, a researcher. I'm a Christian. I'm a sister, a daughter, a friend. I love baking. To my shame, I play the violin very badly. I value kindness, openness, and courage. So to the 30% of Malaysians currently living with a mental health condition, don't lose hope. Remember who you are at the very core of your being. And please do get the help that you need and deserve. And to the 70% of Malaysians with a loved one living with a mental health condition, continue to love and support them. And remember who they are at the very core of their being beyond their mental illness. Let us treat one another with kindness and dignity, without fear or discrimination, for our mental health matters. Thank you.